All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. Hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here alongside Sam, and we've got the equivalent of a double stuffed Oreo, a match preview podcast for you. That's right, Chelsea have two games in quick succession. It's Gent in the Conference League, and we have an opportunity to take on Forest and continue the good times in the Premier League, results staying hopefully in the top four of the Premier League before the very soon to interrupt the vibes international break. But Sam, as we got ready for this one, I don't know how you did it. Ghent coverage is very hard to find. We're not going to put anyone on blast. We're not going to potentially talk about how you got the coverage. But you did. So we do actually have an opportunity to talk about competitive match footage on Ghent in your analysis, an opportunity to break down what's been going on at Forest and one Callum Hudson-Odoi, who might be a bit of a danger man for them at the moment, and plenty other things. But you excited to talk about how Enzo Maresca and the boys can advance and continue to bring smiles, hopefully, to all the Chelsea supporters' faces?
No, absolutely. Just wanted to give a shout out to Alex from the Bot Shot Bot who, went out of his way to get me footage for this one. I was struggling to find it anywhere, and he was like nice enough to give me 3 games to watch. So thanks again, Alex. Love you, my brother. But yes, got this in the nicest way possible. No, underhanded tactics here, but excited for this one, Dan. And I mean, whenever we've gone one tier below the Champions League in terms of like European competitions, we've brought home the bacon. So I'm quite excited for this one. And fingers crossed that we get it off to the perfect start. And just to give sort of our listeners a little bit of a nice incentive, the last time we had a Greek side in the group stages of the European competition, we actually went on to win it. So hopefully Panathinaikos will also be a good one. And excited to talk about Ghent and Forest, and hopefully we can keep a good run going.
Yeah, we hope that, there's an opportunity to enjoy some really, really wonderful celebrations at the end of the season if Chelsea can get the business done in European competition. And it is nice to have Thursday night football back on the menu as we seek that elusive, that illustrious, that fantastic Tuesday, Wednesday activities in the future season. But look, the quick admin that we get away with at the top of every episode, we just always like to thank everybody who supports the podcast. Whether you do that with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, which is always appreciated. You can just do that real quickly. It takes 5 to 10 seconds. So we always appreciate it. You also can subscribe on YouTube. Got plenty of YouTube specific content, a lot of wonderful Chelsea Women's content that Nick has been putting out this season. More to come with that. You also can like and comment on this one. You should just say thanks to Sam and for all the hard work getting Ghent coverage put together. Not easy to do. You can also join us on our Discord community in a free or paid capacity. Tons of chatter during the matches there, which is always a delight. And then you also can sign up for our free weekly newsletter, the London is Blue Dispatch, written by the one and only Sam, CFC Central. But look, let's get into it. It's Ghent, currently sitting with a 5-1-3 record, 16 points, third in the Belgian Pro League. They've got a strong I would say home record. They have played more games at home currently. 3-1-1, 10 points. Away record 2-0-2 on 6 points. They've scored 17 goals this season. They have also allowed in 9. So it's a +8 goal difference for them. They are scoring above what a wonderful math behind expected goal would indicate that they should have scored, currently 12.4, and they have let in less than what the calculators and computers would tell you at 14. So it's a negative on the expected of a 1.7. And last match was a 3-0 victory. And so, Sam, just maybe in general, the Belgian league in terms of a comparison to where does it sit in the realm of European competitions, and then maybe contextualizing where Ghent sits then within the Belgian league outside of just the definition of their table position.
And that's, I think, a super important question just to set the stage. I would probably put it maybe like comparatively close to the Dutch league, the Eredivisie, and in terms of just the pace of play, in terms of how the style is, it's quite similar. And I think players make transitions between both leagues quite effortlessly. So I'd probably place it just outside the top four, top five leagues. There are also some very good players. So I think that's where the strength of the league is, that there's individual quality to be found if you look hard enough. And it's just, I think it's a comfortable environment. It's the way that Premier League and La Liga sort of look at Serie A, saying that they're tactically very good, but when it comes to matching the speed and physicality, maybe like those sides struggle. And I would probably make the same assessment of this league, the Jupiler Pro League as well, that it's maybe not as quick, but individual quality does make the difference. So
Yeah, very kind of important to consider there. And yeah, as we think about the types of teams, I mean, really, I guess, in terms of the ones that people might know, I mean, Club Bruges would be one, probably is a more familiar name for some teams. Antwerp would be another, again, because, currently sits atop the league. But, again, there's not many points separating positions at 1 at 22 points this season with Genk, to 4th with Bruges at 14. So, again, early days in the season there, but seemingly with Ghent at 16 points, which is they're only third on goal difference at the moment here, 11 for Antwerp for 8 to Ghent. So I think things to keep in consideration there. But look, let's just get a quick ad break out of the way, and then we'll just talk about all about the style of play, how they've been getting on. Let's talk about their weaknesses, and we'll talk then about maybe special considerations in the lineup for Maresca with a quick turn to that Forest game. But stay tuned. I'll be right back. All right, Sam. So I know you didn't get a ton of time, but you found an opportunity during a 12-hour train journey to make sure that the work got done. So why don't you walk us through maybe what some of the initial style of play is that we should expect from our opposition this Thursday?
it's a it's an interesting one for me, Dan, because I usually go in with a microscopic view of what to expect in terms of danger. And I don't want to be rude, but I had to look extra carefully to find some semblance of strengths in this one. I think, yeah, I think this could be a walk in the park. I mean, we also have to look at the fact that our second team is playing. But if the team that played against Brighton popped in here, I would predict a 5 or 6. Let's just say that. But in terms of stylistic fits, I'm looking at a side that plays multiple systems. So in the 2.5 games that I watched for this one, they played a 3-5-2 and they also played a 4-3-3. In a back three, I would say their focus is on trying to break through wide areas. So consistently in their back four and in their back five, the wing backs and the full backs basically are very progressive elements. They make runs down the flank, make sure that they're in the attacking third, try to stretch the pitch and receive before crossing into the box or attacking the box with runs. So that's going to be their main, I would say, outlet for any deliveries into the box. So that's something that you have to be careful about. They also sort of sit in relatively a mid block. Their pressing isn't the greatest. Like the strikers are pretty aggressive and try to push on the opposition defense, but the midfield is a little iffy. It looks like it can be caught between having to counter press and also having to sort of screen their own backline and drop, and they sort of get stuck in between those two phases. But they try to counter press, and when they don't, they basically sit back in a 5-4-1 or a 5-3-2, and they try to win the ball in those central areas before breaking as quickly as they can. I've noticed that they also sort of go man to man across the front line before doing this. So if you're looking on 1v1s, that's where player quality will come into effect. And they've, like, in terms of form, is something that I'd probably say is a big plus for them. They've only lost one of the last 9 games, so they've compiled a good bit of momentum. And in terms of the players that sort of caught my eye, the goalkeeper, Davy Riff. I apologize if I'm butchering the pronunciation. I had to listen to the games on mute on my train ride, but he's basically been putting out what I would believe are the best stats from a goalkeeper in the top eight leagues. So his post shot expected goals plus and minus, which basically tells you how many goals the team should have sort of conceded, more than what the number suggests or less than what the number suggests, and they should have conceded eight more goals if he wasn't there in the goal. So it's a very very strong overperformance. It always doesn't suggest that the goalkeeper is a standout sort of player there, but it does suggest that the team has been massively overperforming in that regard. And just to give you context, Dan, they're third in the league, like you mentioned, but their keeper has made the most saves out of anybody in the pro division with 46, and the side that sit top, Genk, has half of those saves with 23. So even with the back five, it's quite a porous defense, and they do let shots on goal. They're also the only side in the top five with a minus expected goal difference, and I think those numbers are a little deceptive. I think they should have conceded more, and they got very very lucky at times. But yeah, that's one thing to watch out for me. And again, from an individual perspective, I'd probably point out to the front line. Frank Serdes, who's this Swiss attacker, he's the top assist provider in the league with five. Quite aggressive, good passing ability, decently quick as well. And I also like Andy Good Johnson, who happens to be the second son of Chelsea cult favorite Eidur Good Johnson. He's an Icelandic international with some nice hold up play, some nice link up play, and he'll try to create openings for the attackers as well as the wing backs breaking forward. So that's what the general gist of play is, Dan. It's, I would say, a decent side, but I mean, it's there are no standout strengths. I mean, I can
Yeah.
basically tell you what they're good at, but I can't tell you something that they excel at, which is I hope it's oversight on my part, but and I'm not doing them any disservices, but I expect this to be comfortable win.
Yeah, it feels as if the only thing that I'm walking away from in that section is to feel like there's an opportunity for an elite type of performance from the goalkeeping position potentially. Maybe not necessarily on the league scale, but just in with this system, within how he's been playing, there's always a concern that Chelsea might play the most average team and end up walking away with a very unfortunate result because a goalkeeper is absolutely standing on their head in terms of how they get it done across us. And like we have played several teams over the last couple of seasons where you would argue Chelsea should have had that 4-0, 5-0, 6-0 type of victory and didn't because the goalkeeper kept them in the game. So maybe that is the one thing that gives me the most concern after your initial assessment is that maybe they've got this excellent goalkeeper candidate in there who might create the best type of highlight reel they could for their next future move if they get the business done and can really show up against us in this match.
Yeah, there were some excellent saves that he made in the two games that I watched. It did look like the defense gave him a little too much to do, but definitely
Hmm.
kept them in the game. So he's again, sometimes the numbers can be misleading and the shots can be low quality, so the goalkeeper is able to like aggregate those numbers over the long term and they look nice on the board, but he genuinely has sort of saved them in some very sticky situations. So again, like you mentioned, you have to be very careful because they are the underdogs and they arrive knowing that they're not playing at home, so they can go all out and they have nothing to lose. And I think that's where the danger is. These sides tend to enjoy the occasion, and there's always a chance to make a name for yourself. So that's what I would be wary of. But yeah, from an individual standpoint, when I look like 1v1, what their first side looks versus what our second side looks, and that's credit to the sporting directors and everybody who's tried to sort of make sure that we have a very healthy second squad. I would still give us the advantage, and that's what we have to do. Like you play your game and you give these hungry players a chance to go at a decent side, which I would probably say like ranks maybe from a top six to a mid-table Eredivisie side. Like that's my assessment of them. you should be able to do well, and a decent, modest victory would be more than welcome.
Well, as we then advance into the conversation, where are we expecting Chelsea to be able to poke and prod and find a way through against this side here? Is there any areas that you've identified as maybe getting you excited, or things that would make our attackers very, very happy with what they're going to get an opportunity to go up against?
Yeah, lots lots of them. So the first thing that I would want to point out is that the left side looks quite weak in defense. And one player in particular that I would exploit at every single opportunity is the left centre back, Jordan Torunariga. He looks out of place, let's just put that kindly. He struggles with speed. He's not good 1v1s. He regularly gives the ball away when he's trying to progress the ball down the pitch. And I believe you should press him at every single opportunity. The downside of it being, I don't think that he starts if they go back four. But seeing that they went against Club Bruges with a back three, and they've tried to be more defensively solid, I do expect him to start. But him coupled with the left wing back or left full back Archie Brown, who tends to push up very, very aggressively, you have an opportunity to sort of like make sure that you can press him, you can make some kind of errors happen. I believe he was at fault for both of the goals for that Kevin Denke scored against them for Cercle Bruges, and didn't have a good game at all. In both the games that I saw, he just looked like awful. So I would 100% try and exploit that should he play. The second thing, Dan, is I think an overall issue, and it's just not a club issue as such. It's a league issue that there's a definite lack of speed throughout the side. And I
Okay.
feel like if you put them against very, very quick athletes and players, you can exploit them. Just genuinely, guys who are very good at accelerating or breaking into space, you will earn fouls and you will give them yellows. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So if the second side is going to be, say, Mikhailo Mudryk and Pedro Neto on the right hand side, then I expect them to at least like have maybe like 10 or 15 fouls done. I don't even know if that happens by halftime, but it definitely be around that number somewhere, and you should put them under pressure with as many yellows as possible. The wing backs, like I mentioned, quite attacking, but when they're defending and when they're in transition, that's when you can get at them. So that's also something that I would keep in mind. The third, I would say, is something tactical. The counter pressing is a bit chaotic. There's also this strategy where they want the wide center backs to help in terms of like pressing, in terms of counter pressing. So a lot of the times you'll see the wide center backs, if they're playing a back three, for example, go as high as the attacking third to try and like stifle the other team. And that can be counterintuitive when you don't have speed because it makes closing down difficult and it makes recovering even more difficult. So that's where you can get at them. If they are not passive and they're trying to be aggressive, if they come out to beat us at our own game, they will get whooped, like absolutely whooped. So I have no doubts about it. So if I were to look at the approach, maybe it's like a back five with a very passive low block, but like a quite an aggressive mid block. That's where I look at it. But if they try to counter press and press us, good luck to them. And the last one I'd probably say is again mentioning the goalkeeper. And I want to sort of give you just how funky the numbers are, Dan. So I was watching the Club Bruges game. They conceded 27 shots. They conceded seven big chances. And these shots were worth 3.19 expected goals. And they ended up having only six shots, two big chances, seven saves by their goalkeeper. And it should have been mauling, but they actually like it should have been absolutely like a game where they should have been decimated, but they came out with a 4-2 win. I don't know how that happened. And again, the goalkeeper made some crucial saves, but if Club Brugge would have taken any of their big chances, it could have been like 6-1, 6-2, or anything close to that. So that's where you wonder whether one of those games where a slightly more clinical side turns up and decides to, you know, take you for a dog walk, like what happens, and that's where I
Hmm.
think the opportunity is. Like it's the stage is completely set. You can go out and play knowing that you've got superior quality, and you can dominate them 1v1 in terms of player quality. So I genuinely would predict a nice scoreline. And I got my 4-2 right last time, but
You did.
I'm hoping for a more generous scoreline this time.
Yeah, considering it, there's an opportunity potentially for a couple of players. You mentioned Mudrik is one who don't necessarily feature much in starts or even regular sub appearances at the moment. That there could be some big opportunities here as we think about lineup. No surprise, Cole Palmer was not registered as a part of that Conference League squad in terms of the list that came out initially here at the top of September, getting us ready for the next stage of the competition. But would you expect more of a lineup similar to what we saw against Barrow, where there was an opportunity for players who are not necessarily featuring in the first team squad at the moment, players like Jorgensen over Sanchez, maybe Joao Felix starting behind Christopher Nkunku, the same way that we saw against our domestic competition? It feels like there should be a fair bit of changes, particularly as we want to balance the side appropriately for a very fast turn to the Sunday match that we'll have against Forest.
Absolutely. And I do believe there will be a minimum of 10, perhaps 11 changes for this one. Perhaps like
Oof.
very similar to Barrow as well. And you've got Romeo Lavia back, which I think allows you to think about how you're going to configure the left side. So you can maybe start with Keenan Dewsbury Hall for the first half, 60 minutes, and then give Lavia the next 30. The only issue is like who plays again. Who is Caicedo's depth in this particular side is a big question for me. I would have really liked somebody like an Andre Santos to be there and deputize in this competition throughout the season, but God bless him, he's having a wonderful time at Strasbourg. So long may that continue, and hopefully that experience will benefit us long term. But might have to be Renato Vega. Could be some other solution. I don't know if like Lavia and you know Cesare Cassidy maybe. I don't know what the configuration is going to be on that side, but could very well be like maybe Dewsbury Hall and Vega is what I'm looking at. But irrespective, I expect like very, very heavy rotation. Like you said, the priority will be to go out there and get the points against Forest and get maybe a nice, decent result on this one.
And anything else in terms of the just squad composition, maybe like a surprise hero? Obviously there's a couple of players who, may get those kind of feature minutes there. You mentioned a few that you might be surprising. Potentially could be an opportunity for Vega to get a start again and potentially feature after, I think, a better cameo performance in the last match that we saw from him. And, I think, again, lots of changes, potentially an opportunity for Badia Shield to continue rebuilding his confidence in the back line. I mean, it's definitely, I think, a couple of, fun matchups to think about, particularly considering this should be a good litmus test for how good that B squad can be against the next stage of this competition in Europe.
I do have like a couple of I'm hoping unsung heroes by the end of the month, but
Okay.
um I think it's like more a matter of fitness because of why like Pedro Neto and Dewsbury Hall have been under fire, but when they're fully fit, I think they're both very good players. So I expect Neto to pick up. I also think that he's much stronger on the right hand side from an individual perspective. And you allow him to play there against the likes of Ghent, then you will get, a very good performance. So I'm sort of like eyeing Pedro Neto for this one if he starts. And we've again seen maybe like a little bit of Renato Vega in terms of offering quality. I don't think we've seen the strongest skill set that he has, like his long passing and the way that he finds runners into the box. And again, that comes down to unfamiliar surroundings, sort of being in a team where there are people who are better than you, maybe. So he's a young guy, he's still trying to adapt. So that perhaps will happen with time when he gets more comfortable. So yeah, I mean him, Pedro Neto, like I said, Dewsbury Hall. When I saw him uh, last season for Leicester, such a good player. Like he's so good, but again, because of injury issues and maybe like not being up to full speed, he's not yet shown what he can do. Has come under a lot of flack, but I expect him to do well. I 100% expect him to do well on the long term. So Hopefully he'll be up to speed. Hopefully we can get him back up to speed. But these are the three players I'd probably look at. I'm also keeping my fingers crossed for Mikhailo Mudryk. This is probably the right game for him, where he can come in, show his speed against a side where there are sort of obvious gaping holes 1v1, and hopefully show us that he can be a part of that Conference League side and be trusted with that rotational duty.
Well, hopefully we get a chance to enjoy a wonderful and easy victory as Maresca refreshes the side, gets ready to, add another type of European competition trophy to Chelsea's cabinets at the wonderful Stamford Bridge and Club Museum. But we're going to take our last break when we get back. It's all about Forest and return to the Premier League this weekend. That's right. The double match preview podcast continues right after this break from our sponsors. Okay, Sam. So we get a little bit of whiplash here as we go from that European trip and then an opportunity for us to consider that match against Nottingham Forest here and thinking about, and not necessarily that we're going on a European trip. It is a home match for us, but a European fixture. And then now an opportunity for us to take on Forest, who currently sit in 10th in the Premier League, right in the middle of the table, with Chelsea in fourth position, and an opportunity for us to, again, keep the good times rolling, an opportunity to enter into the international break in the top four of the Premier League as well, which, I don't know, just feels right. It feels like every goodness that Chelsea has been missing for multiple seasons is returning. All seems to be right in the world. And, I think there's probably less opportunity for movement in the teams above us. Liverpool is playing Crystal Palace, Man City's playing Fulham, and then Arsenal is playing Southampton. So I'm not necessarily expecting any of the teams above us to do us favors. So again, it always comes down to what can you do yourself in this type of match. And I think Chelsea not necessarily have our hands full, but I mean, it is a Forest side that has had some fun results for them this season so far. They have a better away record than they do a home record at the moment. Home record is 0-2-1 with 2 total points. Away record 2-1-0, 7 points. Again, small sample size. They've scored 6 goals this season, and then they have allowed 5 in. So they have a +1 goal difference on there. Said they should have scored more, according to the calculations. 7.2 expected goals, and then expected goals allowed 5.4. So they're kind of right on target there. And just within some of their current fixtures, they did have that 1-0 loss to Fulham. You had the 2-2 draw to Brighton, and they did have that shock result in the 1-0 victory over Liverpool. But just it's a new look Forest, and I think there's an opportunity for Chelsea to hopefully continue the good vibes, the good times, a good result, score more goals against a team that has not been necessarily reticent to allow a ton of goals by them. How are you feeling, maybe just in general, before we talk about the style of play?
And this will be a good test, Dan. I think this one will definitely challenge some other aspects of our play that haven't been tested before. And one of them being, if you allow Forest to retreat into that stubborn 5-4-1 block, how well are you equipped to break it down? I think that's going to be the big question. Maybe there's an opportunity now to see, like, how Sancho sort of figures when he's playing against a compact low block, when he has the space and time to pick his passes. That's going to be very, very interesting for me to see. But from a tactical perspective, we haven't really come up against a side that's camped in their own box or trying to win the ball and break forward. And we mentioned in the Brighton preview, Dan, that that's what Forest are very good at. They have supremely quick players where they're able to exploit any kind of space that you give them in behind. So maybe that's one to watch. You'll definitely see a lot of hassling going on behind that last line. So I expect this to be a very interesting challenge for multiple reasons.
And it's still, as we kind of take a look at the style of play and trying to figure out just maybe what we should expect from this Forest side. If you've not had an opportunity to watch them this season, I'd love to kind of break down maybe what we're seeing in this side, kind of formation wise. How are they featuring in defense? What we should expect, when they have the ball, when they don't have the ball, and maybe if anything we should kind of consider with an attack. Again, not maybe as explosive as Chelsea have been this season, but not many teams really say to that. And again, we're recording this on the Wednesday before the weekend fixtures, so not a whole lot in terms of knowing exactly who is going to be available. There's no pre-match press conference that has taken place yet, and unfortunately, we lack the foresight to prognosticate that far into the future, Sam. So why don't we talk about just what those expectations are for how this team gets on?
For certain. I think Nuno Espirito Santo is somebody who's given us a lot of grief when he was at Wolves.
Yes.
And you always have to, yeah, you always have to be a little cautious with his sides because they're very good at being compact and then basically exploiting you in transition. And this is what I think Forest's game model is. They've again tried some very interesting things compared to last season. Nuno, for me, is a pretty tactically sound manager. He was, in my opinion, the only manager last season in that end of the season 5 game run where he gave us issues with that inverted fullback. He actually countered it really really well, and we had to wait until the second half for Pochettino to basically go back to putting Kukurea at left back to fix that and go from basically losing late on in the game to turning it around and winning it thanks to Reece James. So 100% going to be an interesting battle there tactically. Um, in terms of the style of play, I think it's basically remained the same. They like going a 4-2-3-1, which becomes a 4-4-1-1 or a 4-4-2 out of possession in a mid block. Gibbs White, who's the number 10, and in my opinion, the best player in the Forest side, he joins the front line next to Wood and then becomes, an auxiliary striker. And both of them keep switching. So one will try and press the centre backs, the other will try and shadow the pivot. If there are two pivots, then both of them will try not to press the centre back and they'll basically come on the double pivot and ask your centre backs to do the progressing, which can be a trouble against the likes of Levi Colville. So it'll be interesting to see how they fix that. But up front, Wood is a really good target man. He's got a great scoring record in the Premier League. He's also got a very good gas tank, so he will press. He will cause a lot of issues to the centre back. He's super physical, very very good in the air. So that's one for West Fofana and Colville to handle, which will be a good challenge. And when they basically go from that mid block 10, they then, like I said, retreat into that infamous 5-4-1. And they've got some good defenders on either side. They've got Ola Aina, obviously, Cobham Boy. Everybody knows him. He's a two-way fullback. Will do very well 1v1. He's also two-footed, so he can defend on either side. You have to be careful with it. Alex Moreno on the other side, I would say more of a wing back, somebody who likes attacking and will push forward at the earliest opportunity. They've got a new centre back partnership in Murillo, who's somebody that we were looking at apparently in the summer for 70 million. He's an excellent progressive element there in the side, very good at passing, very, very good at carrying. Probably like for me, one of the best centre backs in Europe in terms of on the ball when he's carrying and dribbling through it. There was this incredible moment against Liverpool where he was facing his own goal under pressure and he pirouetted and basically like did an elastico to get the ball. And then as soon as he turned, he hit a through ball on for Gibbs White in behind. And Konate was like, what the hell just happened? And Gibbs White had a 1v1 and he fluffed the chance. But just a measure of how dangerous he can be on the ball. So he's the centre back that you have to watch in terms of making sure he doesn't dribble or get the ball too often. And they're very dangerous when the ball is won. Like that's the best that I compliment that I can give them. As soon as they take the ball off you, it'll be Gibbs wide, it'll be one of the midfielders trying to play a ball in behind for you to run. And when you've got good players like Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi who are very quick, who are able to get into the box and cause a lot of issues 1v1, it's a problem. When you've got somebody like Chris Wood, who's a great aerial threat in the box, that's also a problem. So you have to be well aware of those triple threats in the front line. So that's going to be one thing to watch. Wood also gives them the route one option, Dan. So if
Mhm.
they are under a lot of pressure, Wood will just sort of keep pushing the centre backs further and further up the field, try to knock it down for other people, and then get their faster players to break. So you still have to be very careful of that front three when even when they're in a deep block. It'll be tougher for them to attack, but they've got the speed to make it count. And the last thing I'd probably like to mention is I was watching the Liverpool game, and they did again very well. The first half, they just sacrificed essentially all of their attack just to be defensively solid. And they had, I think, zero point 0.0 expected goals in the first half. And Nuno, to his credit, trying to make it a lot more possession heavy, essentially went with Elliot Anderson, who's a central midfielder, at left wing to make sure that he was tracking up and down on Salah's wing, and also sort of like being on Trent Alexander-Arnold when he was inverting into midfield. So that I thought was like a really nice tactical fix to do. And the last game that they played against Fulham, they actually played a 4-4-2. Again, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga both sort of benched for the two new guys. Anderson on the left hand side, sorry, Anderson on the right hand side, and you had who's Nicolas Dominguez on the other side. So basically, two other wide players who are making you more compact out of possession, but it comes at the cost of somebody like a Hudson-Odoi or Elanga who can give you a lot more attacking verve. So I think that's what Forest's evolution looks like, Dan. They're moving towards trying to be more secure because I think they know clean sheets will keep them from relegation rather than scoring goals. So I
Mhm.
don't think they're looking to go and hit somebody for 3-0. They're trying to get one goal and basically like shut shop and make sure that they're very solid. So that's going to be like the interesting point for me. Like if the priority is defense, what issues and what headaches are you causing them, and how quickly can you get that lead? Because if you do get that lead, then I think the game becomes very interesting. And yeah, they've also got good options. I know Avonji is somebody that I personally like in terms of a centre forward. He's just come back and he played in the front two with Chris Wood last game, but they lost that one. So maybe they'll go back to their original sort of setup and try to frustrate us over the course of 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think that as we shift to talk about where Chelsea can hit them, particularly with those run of fixtures that we talked about previously, there is a bit of yo-yoing that they've done in terms of the performances they've been able to stitch together. I mean, getting a result against Liverpool and then losing to Fulham just feels like the absolute seesaw of results in the Premier League there. It feels as if they're still aside trying to figure out how to get to that point you mentioned of establishing a balance of being comfortable with the way that they play on executing, Nuno's vision in terms of what you would expect with this side. So it feels like across all of these things, they don't have necessarily a perfect defense. They don't have necessarily a perfect midfield. They don't necessarily have a perfect attack. I think there's times where it works well for them, but do you want to get into the specifics on any of those? Because I feel like the real weakness is just imbalance across the entirety of the setup.
Yeah, absolutely. One, again, the first I would like to point out the same weakness as Ghent, the left hand side. And Moreno probably didn't make it at Aston Villa for maybe this exact reason that he's a little shoddy when he's defending. Yeah, I think he's again like a left wing back, somebody who's very good pushing up and doing the attacking things, but you can isolate him and get the better of him, especially if you have him against somebody like a Madueke or Neto, then issues sort of start to pop up. He had a horrible game against Fulham. I think he was dribbled 5 times in that game, the same as Gusto, coincidentally, who I thought had a pretty decent game against Mitoma. So that's one to watch. I think you can get at him 1v1 if given the chance, if given the opportunity. So I expect that 1v1 to happen a couple of times. Um, the second is like the run of form, like we've mentioned, um, some good results. Like Liverpool was a stellar result, 2-2 against Brighton. And overall, if you look at the bigger picture, they just won two of their last seven. They lost their unbeaten Premier League record last game. But they were obviously missing Gibbs White because he was suspended in that one. But it'll be interesting to see how they function under pressure. So maybe like it gets a little anxious after a certain point in time if we go up early. Maybe mistakes start to happen. So that's something to keep an eye on. We mentioned the tactical switch with central midfielder at winger, trying to make them more solid. That again comes at a cost. Dan, if you look at like them underperforming on their expected goals and basically not accumulating enough to be strong. I think that can be a problem if you're trying to get, a sneaky goal. It just reduces the overall probability of you snatching something. So that's definitely going to be one thing that I'd maybe advise against. The general pattern has been to stay solid, keep a clean sheet until maybe like 60 minutes, and then bring on Callum Hudson-Odoi and Ilanga against like tiring legs to try and cleave us up. But if we do have to make this game interesting, I think you definitely need like one, preferably two goals before the 60-minute mark. And then when Ilanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi come on and the game becomes open, then you can hit them for more. But if it's locked in by 70, 72 minutes, it's going to be increasingly harder to break them down. So that's definitely something that we'll probably have to be wary of over the course of the game. And the third is like the last one is probably like the injury absences, sort of like enforced imbalance that has happened in midfield. I think they wanted to go with perhaps an Elliot Anderson plus one of Danilo and Ibrahim Sangare, but both Danilo and Sangare have been out recently. So they've actually had to go to, I would say, their fourth choice midfield element in James Ward-Prowse, who's sensational on set pieces and has again given us a lot of trouble. But you pair him with somebody like a Ryan Yates with Anderson moving on the wing, and it looks like a very weak midfield partnership. Yates is pretty good defensively, but he's not the quickest. He's not great on the ball. There's not a lot of retention there. So if that midfield partnership does start because the other two guys are injured, then trying to exploit them through the center could be the answer, especially because they make it so hard out wide with that 5-4-1. So try to get through the center, try to run at them, basically give them issues, get them on a quick yellow. That for me would be a good opportunity to exploit.
And so as we project forward, I mean, you flipped the script last time asking me some questions in terms of what you think Maresca should do and put me on the spot. So do you have a couple of things that we should be considering, we should be thinking about as supporters for big questions to get ready in preparation for this match?
Can I interrogate you again? Would that
Yes,
be fair?
absolutely.
Now, the first thing is like from the two games that I've like two sides that I've watched, I do expect this to be, maybe two games back to back that we have to face a back five. So
Mhm.
what do you think, should the approach be in terms of like what should Maresca do in terms of personnel? Who would you like to see? And what would you like to see us do? Do you want us to go aggressive, or do you want us to play the long game and make sure that we break them down? Also, because we've ceded a lot of control. So, do you want to see us correct that, or do you want us to sort of push our foot on the accelerator and try to break them down quickly?
I feel like it has to be another foot on the accelerator type of experience. I mean, it does feel as if this Forest side can cause a little bit of disharmony in a way a team prefers to play. I mean, this is maybe what we saw in that Liverpool match, but it does feel that they are gettable in that regard. And maybe is it going to be a repeat of what we saw with the Cole Palmer 4 experience that we had a chance to witness recently, where it was an opportunity for us to experience the good times with a little less possession than we're typically willing to have or want to have, but getting an opportunity to really slice and dice through a defense. It feels as if there's going to be an opportunity to do that. And, I think we talked about this idea of Chelsea and Maresca really getting towards understanding who that best Premier League 11 is for Chelsea. I got to say, unless there's a major injury, I just wouldn't see a reason to change it at this point. I mean, I think maybe the only one, and probably unlikely given the fact that we're going to be playing the match against Ghent on Thursday. I mean, maybe you could have said, "Hey, for Madueke, we're gonna bring in maybe Neto to start, just to kind of keep things fresh there." But it feels as if the Sanchez between the sticks, the Gusto, Fofana, Colwell, Cucurella, the Caicedo, Fernandez, the Palmer, Sancho, Jackson. Like I feel like 10 of the spots, as long as everybody's healthy, are just gonna be the same. And maybe on the right wing is where you would change one of the players if you felt like that was the opportunity to do so. But I don't see, and you can disagree, that there's going to be any major changes. I think Maresca wants to get closer to having consistent synergy, to continuing to allow our center back partnership to get in sync with one another, and feels as if there's an opportunity to take the same type of game plan that we had against Brighton, which again didn't feel great in the first couple minutes, but boy oh boy, our tune changed quite quickly, though there is that concern that we can get bypassed still when we're playing a little bit more smash mouth in the way that we're attempting to go at it.
Nice. I absolutely like agree with every single point that you've made. Like why try to fix something that's not broken? And obviously you want to challenge maybe Madueke a little bit because I felt like he's not lived up to the lofty standards he sort of the dreams he sold us with that hat trick. Let's just say that. So he can be a world beater, and we want to push him to be better. So maybe that's how Maresca sees it. But yeah, second question is probably going to add a little bit of spice to the end of the podcast. So let's put you really on the on the Iron Throne. Enzo Fernandez, deserving captain, yes or no?
Oh, wow, that's rough. I feel like, how do you define deserving captain in terms of, like, can they just exercise calm and composure on the pitch and to keep the side kind of put together? Like, is that how you're kind of judging the expectation? Like, I don't know. I
I'm sort of
guess.
hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at from a holistic perspective. So his
Yeah,
performances arguably haven't been there. Let's just be completely honest here.
sure.
Like we've seen him at his best against, say, first game of the season against Liverpool. He was stupendous. Like that's his peak. And we've not seen a performances where we've oohed or ahed like waxed lyrical about him after that at all. He did a couple of really good things against Brighton, but that's just it, like three or four moments of magic. The rest just looks like he's maybe in limbo, doesn't quite know what to do. Are there more deserving people in the side? Like, what's your read on the situation long term?
Ooh, long term. So that's a good question. I generally like, my preference is for typically it to be a defender, and typically to be someone, and I mean, maybe this is, as a Chelsea supporter, you see John Terry with an armband for a significantly long period of time, and you just get conditioned to it being a center back who is in the right type of individual to carry the armband. I mean, we see plenty of other positions, from attackers to even goalkeepers across the Premier League, who and European and world football, who carry it. I'm of two minds. I think you could give it to two other people at this moment. I think if you gave the armband to Cole Palmer at the moment as the guy, I don't think you could have much question about it, though I would rather him focus on his game and not have to take on any additional responsibility. I feel like it's just, anything could be a distraction. Would he be completely worthy of it as just being the guy on the team? Yes. I mean, you see, with Spurs, essentially, Heung-min Son is the captain there, so like there is a precedent for the attacker, who is the individual carrying the armband. But I feel as if, like, Levi Colwell is the next guy I'm looking to, and it might be a little premature. Um, but it feels as if he is the center back one. If we say that he is going to be key and pivotal in there, he's going to likely play, every single Premier League minute that is possible this season, and a large majority of the other minutes available this season. Feels like he would be the other candidate for me right now. I do agree that the Enzo has not been at his best, but those would be the two names that jump out to me as regular players, contributors who, if you were going to move off of that, and again, we're not sure when Reece James is going to return, so that necessarily isn't even in the conversation and consideration at this point. But those are the two names that would jump out at me as considerations. But let me know if you agree, disagree, or have other off the wall suggestions.
Yeah, I think that's a very well balanced answer. For me, I am a little reluctant because I think the general perception tends to be the best player tends to be captain or somebody who's, vocally fierce, is sort of like visibly there on the pitch in terms of like directing, guiding. Some leaders are just not that. They just show their best in the dressing room. So I'm a little hesitant to judge Enzo on that basis. And sometimes your best players aren't captains. Let's just accept that. So Aspi, for example, played with N'Golo Kante, played with Eden Hazard. He was for the longest time one of the best 1v1 defenders in the league, but he also played with some really, really good players. And he kept the armband through all of that. And I think it was just because of the man that he is. He's a model citizen, somebody that everybody in the club looked up to. With Enzo, I think there is perhaps, a young player who's obviously got a lot of learning to do, but maybe what he's showing away from cameras is tangible, is important. But I do think that the performances need to merit it. I think he needs to. It's a very heavy armband, Dan, the one that you carry for Chelsea. So he definitely has to earn it. And we've seen that when he's on song, he can be one of the best in the world. But I think that needs to be fulfilled. That needs to be earned. That's my assessment there. In terms of alternative names, I would probably pick Moises Caicedo. He looks like a proper
Yeah.
leader to me. Yeah, I think he radiates, calmness. He radiates. He's working like graveyard shifts on that horrible spell that he has to do in between, being like a defensive pivot, having to slot into defense, having to push forward and break attacks. It's a chaotic role, but he's absolutely grinding it down, and he's still showing reason to be one of the best players around. So I would 100% consider giving it to him. Enzo has also given the armband to him whenever he's got subbed. So I think he is in their leadership hierarchy. So he would be my pick, but I have no issues if you give it to Colwell either. I think he's also somebody who probably dreams of it long term, but
Mhm.
I probably wouldn't give it to Palmer. I genuinely wouldn't. For just like because I don't know how he's like in the dressing room in terms of like leading.
Sure.
I think it's just the second season, so giving it to him maybe like is a bit of an iffy situation. Plus, I'm a little paranoid. I don't want anything else weighing on his performances that he's putting out. You don't want to give him extra pressure. So I don't think he feels pressure in the first place, but let's not disturb the equilibrium for me. So out of that decision, out of just respect for that, I'd probably give it to the slightly more seasoned campaigners, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense to me when you take it all into consideration. I think the last question we have before I get out of it here is with this match against Forest, will Chelsea make it 4 Premier League wins in a row? You even got the scoreline right last time of the 4-2. How are you feeling about how this one will go?
So both games, I'm assuming.
You can go with both. Yeah, I'm going to say just because the Ghent match and Conference League is a little more whack-a-mole. I was willing to say you could take that one off and just say like you can give a general. I think we've given the general perspective that Chelsea should win comfortably in that game.
Mhm.
But if you have more specifics, you're more than welcome to make a prediction, particularly because you've been so good at it recently, and you can carry that forward.
Oh my God, the pressure. But yeah, Ghent, I'll probably go for like 3 or 4-0, one of the two. I generally expect it to be quite open. I expect us to make the most of it. Forest is, I think, going to be a little cagey. I would probably go for a 2-0 or a 2-1. I think it's going to be close. What about you, Dan? Do you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, 2-1 was exactly where my mind was at. With just the nature of these fixtures, is that we've also seen some interesting performances from Sanchez recently, and it does not feel like there is a perfect fit at the moment in terms of all of our defensive result and midfield connection always getting the job done. So I do feel like there's an opportunity, particularly for some Callum Hudson-Odoi type of result.
By interesting, do you mean like pole vaulting straight into an electric fence?
Ouch. Yeah, a shocking type of interaction there. So hopefully that's not the case.
I
But
mean, I
look,
would I would prefer it. I would prefer it to be electrifying, but unfortunately, it was shocking. So maybe not far off from the experience. Hopefully, he'll turn the other way and give us something to cheer about again.
Okay, well, we're going to just absolutely shut down the electrical puns. We're going to wrap on this episode. We're going to send you into a match against Gent in the Conference League. We're going to get into the match against Forest. We've got plenty of additional content coming your way this week, though, and more to come during the international break. But that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you so much to Sam. Thank you so much to you, the wonderful viewer and listener. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.